So this is going to be kind of a welcome back introduction video of sorts. I was not planning on doing any sort of shop tour, and that's mainly because you'll see in the video, because I do post a little bit of footage, the shop isn't really at a point where I want it to be with packing and the move and all of that and owning a business. I just didn't have a lot of time to set it up. I basically had to get all my stuff in here and get it into a fully functioning workshop fairly quickly. So everything's just kind of propped into place and set up so that it can work as a shop, but it's not really where I want it to be. A lot of that has to do with the fact that all of my tables and jigs and stuff were set up for the old shop, and the old shop had a lot of architectural hurdles, and that those didn't really translate to a new square flat floored space. So I had to spend a lot of time rebuilding stuff. It really just sucked up time, and then I had deadlines coming up. So that's kind of why the shop is where it's at. But I did show some footage of it so people can get an idea of what's going on. And I do have some footage from first setting everything up, which will probably be part of this video. But people have been asking for a shop tour in all the To BreadBoard videos. That's probably the biggest comment I've gotten. So in order to answer questions in the form of a video, it just kind of saves time in the comment section as well. It should answer a lot of questions. The shop and the house, I moved, obviously. I'm in New Jersey now, but I did not buy the house. An opportunity popped up where I could have free rent and a shop in exchange for fixing up the house. So that is kind of the deal. That also means that there will be a lot more home improvement videos on the channel coming up, because I'm going to fulfill my side of that obligation. I don't like to put a ton of my personal life on the internet, but I feel like that is important to mention as well, because I have gotten comments about why I decided to move to a space that's about square footage wise the same as my old shop, and a couple other comments. So that will save answering all of those questions as well. So in general, I'm back to regular Saturday uploads. After this, it will already be a project video. I have probably 2 months worth of footage saved up. So that is nice. I won't be backed up against the wall with project footage. And I also should have some tool review videos coming out as well, not in lieu of the Saturday videos, in addition to, and a couple of those will be laser videos, and I have struck deals with the companies at the end of the review to give away the laser. There will be no purchase necessary. It's not any sort of scam. Even though they're a time commitment, I do enjoy the tool review videos, and I do enjoy tinkering around with these lasers, but I don't need an entire army of lasers, so I figured it would be a nice way for someone who wants one to get their hands on one. So look for those coming out as well. So this is what the shop looks like as of now. Like I said, it's functional, but it's not really where I want it to be. And in the back there is a false wall, and you'll see why I built that false wall solely for soundproofing. So the space itself is a concrete double car garage. There was this piece of furniture as well as a loft already in the space. I kind of decided in the beginning to keep them, especially the loft, for storage. You could see I already started putting stuff up there, but the loft was poorly made. You could see it was kind of coming apart from the wall. And this shop has to be soundproof, at least inside the house, because people are going to be working from home. So I can't make any noise, which is why in the beginning I have that sound test, and quite a bit of sound leaks through the main walls. So the first thing I had to do was really prepare this space for soundproofing. So I started pretty simply by adding some weather stripping to the door So there's a bottom runner, all this stuff I purchased at Lowe's. There's quite a few large gaps at the top, so I filled all of that with spray foam. I did a lot of research about sound, how sound travels, the best ways to stop sound, and basically it's going to travel through any sort of cracks you have in the walls. So the best way to deal with it is to fill the cracks, and but luckily, since this is a masonry building, I had a head start. And I was pleasantly surprised that little bit of weather stripping really cut down on the sound leaking through that door by about half. But I would still have to do more to keep the sound down. So I bought a product called green glue, which is used to fill cracks. It's also used to glue drywall to each other. This stuff is pretty expensive, and I used it to fill cracks. Honestly, I don't know if I needed it for my purposes, but since I bought it, I'm using it. The main thing I did was I built a false wall right in front of the cinder block wall. So you can see I'm putting a footer down on the ground, I'll put a header up in the air, and I just studded it out, add insulation. Now the way to technically do this foolproof is to decouple the wall from the existing wall, which technically I'm doing because I'm building it in front of it. Sound will transmit through layers, so if this wall was attached to the concrete wall, the sound will just go through both. So decoupling it or building it in front of the wall creates an air gap, which kills the sound. And then you can use 2 layers of drywall, but you could see from my sound test, because this is cinder block, I already have pretty good sound blockage. Now the exterior wall, which I'm working on right now, which is cinder block and then a layer of brick outside, no sound came through that at all, as you could see in the video. But these other walls are just cinder block, so sound was leaking through them. So that's why I decided to build this wall. It was an expense, but at the same time, having to deal with sound leaking through would have been more of a headache over time, not being able to work at certain times. So I built this wall pretty standard. You could see I'm going through it pretty quickly. I'm not a wall builder, I'm not a drywaller. Basically it's just a 2x4 studded wall in front of this concrete wall. I believe this space is about 20 feet wide, if I remember correctly, and this is about 3 inches in front of the wall, and this is 2x4, so they're 3.5 inches thick, so I'm losing about 6 inches in the back of the wall. I started with tap cons, but I didn't love the way they were grabbing into the cinder block, so then I added anchors, which I should have done in the first place. These things take a little bit longer, but they really do secure the pieces to the wall. And then I knew I was going to be hanging lumber off of this, so that's why I kind of went overkill in building it. But this is pretty simple stuff. It was 16 inches on center studs. The price of lumber is ludicrous, but this back wall is almost 10 feet. So I bought 10-foot 2x4s in the back here. It's nice that it's that tall, but they are a little more expensive than the 8-footers. And then since I was going through all this hassle, I did decide to insulate it. Not only should that help with the temperature, but the insulation is also a acoustic buffer as well. Like I said, I did a lot of research on this. There's grades and rating for what stops sounds, what doesn't stop sounds. If you need to soundproof your space, you really need to decide what your walls are made out of. Like I said, I approached this very differently based on the fact that I was working with masonry than I would if it was more modern construction, but also just be really careful. There's a lot of products on the market that claim to stop sound, and they're not going to do it. There's a lot of garbage out there. So then to cover this wall, I'm using 5/8 inch drywall. I use that for 2 reasons. Number 1, it is fire rated, which is nice, but number 2, the 5/8 inch will stop more sound. Now, like I said, if you are using newer construction, the method of choice is to decouple the wall. They sell decoupling brackets, which are really expensive, which is why I didn't use them, and I decided instead to build the wall in front of the cinder block wall, and then to use 2 sheets of 5/8 inch drywall with green glue in between the drywall. I got lucky, like I keep saying, because this back wall cinder block, this fake wall with 1 layer of drywall pretty much stops all sound, which you'll see later in the video, from leaking into the house. Now I should have staggered these drywall joints. I didn't. I was trying to get this done as fast as possible, and it was like 90 degrees all summer. But as you could see, there was little to no sound leakage after building that wall. This is just some footage of when I first had everything in the space. It was pretty cramped until I could build that wall and get everything in place. I apologize, I thought I had more footage of setting up this back wall, but you could see when I'm showing the poorly built cabinets that were in the space that I took down, I built a rack in the back, and I mudded and taped the whole wall. I thought I had footage of that, but apparently I don't. You can see that wall. The lumber rack was just basically some 2x4s with some holes drilled on angles and some pipe. There's plans for that online if you're interested. And then the loft I rebuilt, as you can see, and I put that cabinet, big cabinet underneath of it to save space. I also thought I had footage of that, but I really didn't. And originally I had my table next to the table saw, but I decided to move it to save space. It's kind of what it looks like right now. So like I said, I'm not going to get too in-depth with everything because the shop is still a huge work in progress. I wouldn't even say it's 50% done. But this one wall has mainly just turned into the stationary tool holding place. I just kind of have everything lined up against that wall. And the only shelving on this side that I kept was this one in the corner, just so I had a place to quickly put all of my finishes and stuff. But you could see where I stopped with the drywall. I'm going to extend this whole thing, and then I could build out shelving and whatnot on this wall. The back wall, which you'll see in the video, is pretty much the only portion of the shop that's done, but not necessarily organized. Everything I didn't have a space for that needs to go in drawers or cabinets when I build them is kind of up in the loft. And then I need to kind of go through these as well. I was just placing stuff as I was unpacking. But this is where I moved my second table to, which is much more useful than where I had it. Leaves this whole space open for building. And the lumber rack I made, which I didn't film, but there should be some footage of it in the video, is back there, and that keeps all of my lumber out of the way. The table saw is kind of floating in the middle. And then over in this corner, there is no shed in this house, so all of that stuff is kind of hanging out here for the time being. Once the shed is built, hopefully next spring, I'm planning on putting a stationary dust collector there. So right now I'm using my dust collector from the old shop and kind of moving it around to the tools, which works but is a pain. And then the miter saw station, this is actually the same station I had in the old shop. You probably just never saw how rickety it is because it was fit into that space and you couldn't really see it past the table saw. But eventually, and probably the first improvement I will make is, once again, you can see where I ended the drywall right at the post there. I'm going to drywall out this section and then make a continuous stream of cabinets and a station for the miter saw and the radial arm saw, and that should have plenty of storage to kind of really start cleaning up the shop. This is the one tool purchase I've made since I've been here, mainly because I didn't necessarily need a miter saw for the shop, but because there's going to be so much home improvement sort of stuff going on. Doing crown and doing baseboards and doing accent walls and doing wainscoting and all of that, I just needed a better miter saw. And it worked out that I had enough gift cards to get this and this DeWalt stand that came with it it was a freebie promotion for $150. So this saw was on sale and there was a promotion. So between that and the gift cards I had, it was an awesome deal. I think this saw is usually like $400. So I am quite enjoying it. It is handy to have as well. So all of this stuff had to be fitted to the new shop, which is what took a long time. I have some temporary electric back there. I ran a sub panel in order to not blow any circuits. So all that wiring, once these walls are all trimmed out, will have to be solidified. So you can see it is a working shop. I've been making projects in here, but there's a ton I want to do to it in order to get it more efficient, really. Mostly just more storage.